Does being nonpartisan mean you can't speak up and speak out when you see something wrong? Let's talk about it today on the Non-Partisan Evangelical. Hi everyone, I'm Paul, the Non-Partisan Evangelical from the NPE podcast at npepodcast.com. And today we're talking about partisanship and can we speak out, and particularly in the light of the impeachment papers being delivered to the Senate, and we'll go into an impeachment trial in the Senate, or a removal trial of whether to remove President Trump from office or not. Now, I don't think it's going to be much of a trial, but it's definitely going to send people to their corners of determining, am I on this side or this side? And an interesting thing came up this week because I'm going to be hanging out with a group called Vote Common Good who are coming to Fresno. You can see their website at votecommongood.org. And one of the stated goals on their website is they want people not to vote for Donald Trump for president in 2020. Now, that's not exactly my stance, but that's okay. We can still learn and work and discuss together. But so some people were telling me, since that is something this group has stated, Paul, isn't it partisan for you to be a part of that discussion? And my answer to that is no. Actually, when you see something that's wrong, even with somebody that's your party or somebody you voted for, and you don't say anything, you remain silent, now that's partisanship. Partisanship says, I have to defend my side, I have to vote for my side, and I have to say yes to my side at all cost. And now, a lot of Christian friends I have will say, I don't do that. But how many times have you heard this? Yeah, I don't like how the president tweets, but this, and all those things. And I think the question has to be more than, am I just a supporter of Donald Trump because I think he's given us our best chance to get the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, or he's giving us our best chance to be able to say Christmas at Christmas time, or he's given us our best chance to move the embassy in Israel. And so all the other things I have to either poo-poo, ignore, or absolutely defend the president at all cost, or even worse, turn off my brain and not listen to facts. Is that what I'm supposed to do because God has put Donald Trump in place, and to stand against him, as some of my friends says, then is sort of this litmus test of you must not be a Christian if you're not supporting Donald Trump at all cost. And it's interesting because a friend of mine this week gave me a passage out of the Bible to sort of defend this idea that Donald Trump is sent by God to be president, and therefore we need to support what he does. And it's in the book of Romans in the Bible, Romans 13, and I'm not going to read a ton of this to you, but you can read it yourself, Romans 13, 1 through 5. And it starts this way. It says, let every person be subject to governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. So if I'm reading this, I would say, Bible says this, I believe the Bible, therefore Donald Trump became president. He must have been put there by God. And so then it goes on to say, therefore whoever resists the authorities resist what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. If you're not following Donald Trump, you're resisting what God has put in place, and therefore you're going to have judgment. And it goes on to say, if you're a good person, you don't have anything to fear from that authority. But if you're a bad person, you do have something to fear, because that authority gets to put out the wrath of God. And so, therefore, if Donald Trump is saying something bad about Nancy Pelosi, well, I have to support that because God put Donald Trump in place, and Nancy Pelosi standing against him, so she will incur not the wrath of Donald Trump, but the wrath of God for standing against Donald Trump. And then don't even think about General Soleimani over there in Iran. He definitely faced the wrath of God, the ultimate wrath of God of being wiped off the face of the earth by the God-given authority. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. I believe God does intervene in the affairs of man, and our forefathers said that he does. And I think there are just some mystical things about life that we don't understand sometimes. But the problem is this. Does this passage mean, as my friend was pointing out to me, that I have to support Donald Trump at all costs? And does it also mean that I have to support the wars that the United States get into, and when my enemy gets killed, I celebrate that? Because that was another thing my friend was pointing out, is that, hey, this passage says that those in authority have the right to mete out the wrath of God on people. So does it say that And is that what I need to come to the conclusion of when I read that? Now, the danger of reading the Bible in a way that Americans read it sometimes is we read it through this very American filter. And so wrath of God says to us, yes, then I get to throw a drone and kill somebody across the world because they're bad and I'm good. And if I do that, it's okay because I'm a Christian nation and we get to do that. I think there is a time for a just war. I don't think we've fought a lot of them since World War II, but there is a time, I'll agree with that. But the question then is, do we celebrate that? Do we go out chanting USA in the street when something like that happens? And the thing is, when I read Romans 13 and I just take that passage out, I can misinterpret what it's saying. And here's one way I know that's occurring in this instance. The Bible was broken into chapters hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after it was written. When it was written, it was all written in one part. So Romans 12 and Romans 13 as chapters would have come in one. They wouldn't have been broken up into separate chapters. So it's important to sort of read the whole context of what we're reading there. And again, I'm not going to read a ton of this, but I will go to the end of Romans 12 to talk about how it impacts that Romans 13 passage and if it means I'm supposed to support Donald Trump at all costs. It says this in Romans 12:17, repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. That's saying, if you don't have to fight, don't fight. If you don't have to kill, don't kill. Then it goes on to say, beloved, never avenge yourselves. What were we saying? Hey, this guy's a bad guy. He was threatening Americans. Let's take him out. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And then it goes on to say something very interesting. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink, for by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not overcome evil by evil, but overcome evil with good. So this goes to the point of what I'm talking about. Am I supposed to support Donald Trump all the time and everything he does, or at least say, minimize what he does so that we can get to the good end of the means to an end? I think what this is saying is you have to look at the attributes of leadership. If every leadership has been put in place by God and they have the right to mete out God's wrath for anything they see as wrong, then I could make the argument that the Iranian government has been put in place by God, and the Saudi government and the North Korean government have been put in place by God, and they're just doing what they see as the right wrath of God to pour out. And obviously we wouldn't agree with that. We wouldn't even agree that, most of us would say, yes, this guy was threatening to kill people, we get to take him out. I'm willing to go there with you. But should our heart be set that, hey, if the president says it, therefore it has to be good, and if you question it, you're bad. If you question the president's characteristics and behavior on a daily basis, the way he treats people, the way he deals with truth, and yes, when he's on the phone with a foreign leader saying, hey, I need you to do me a favor, I need you to do something to make my political opponent look bad, which he did, by the way, if you read the transcripts, then it is okay and not partisan to stand up and say, hey, that's wrong. In fact, partisanship is what tells you you can't come against that. Partisanship doesn't, nonpartisan, in my non-partisan evangelical title, doesn't mean I never stand up and say, hey, that's wrong, of any elected official. What it says is, I will never allow any indoctrination, religious or political or otherwise, decide how I treat people and events and think about things that are happening around me. I won't be kept silent by any partisanship or any religious thought. I will do a Romans 12:2. I'll have my ideas challenged so that I can know what's right in a season. Yes, if you believe authority is put in place by God, absolutely honor it and live with that. But to believe that that means you never, ever stand against anything or say anything that person does is wrong, that is a partisan spirit. And I just refuse to be a part of that, because I believe God doesn't require that of us. And not only does he not require it of us, he doesn't desire it of us. So this weekend I'm going to be hanging out in Fresno with a group called Vote Common Good. Their website is votecommongood.org. They're going to challenge some of you. They're going to stretch some of you. And I want you to come out and be a part of it. And not shut down your mind and say, I'm going to be partisan, just believe what I'm supposed to believe. But I want to hear from other people who love God, who maybe think differently than me. And what they're going to ask is, Are you voting your values if you say, because of the Supreme Court justices and Roe v. Wade, then everything else I have to ignore and only that matters? Or does treating people well and giving the right heart and integrity to the office of presidency, does that matter when we're voting as a Christian? I want you to come out and think about these things and votecommongood.org. And also, I've got some great stuff coming up. We're going to living rooms, my wife and I, and having these discussions with people in their network, in their living rooms. And if you would like us to come out to your place, contact me on my website on the events and context button and say, hey, Paul, come to our house, meet our friends, and let's talk a little nonpartisan evangelical. And we could be hanging out with you. npepodcast.com is the website. Be good to one another. Be kind. It actually is the message of the Bible. And saying, well, if it's ugly and nasty, but it gets us to the good end, I'm for it. That's not heaven. That's not the kingdom. And that's not what he requires of us or what God would say he desires of us. Anyway, thanks for listening. That's the way I see it. That's the way I see the Bible. That is the nonpartisan evangelical. I'm Paul. See you again soon at npepodcast.com.